Welcome to Success Authorities Conversation Street with Leadership Authority Peter Beaumont and with Business Culture Authority Ronn Lehmann and me, Linda Ruhland, Success Authorities founder.
Cragg is a critical power, backup power, keep the heat, light, and power on in your building or your company. We're employee owned. We're an ESOP, about 55 years old. I'm the president CEO. I've been at the company about 11 years and been in this role for 5. We do kind of a little bit of everything. We're a distributor, we're a manufacturer's rep, we do sales and service, anything in the critical power. But our biggest challenge is just supply chain issues. And it started, obviously with all the COVID, things going on a couple of years ago. And for the most part, it's gotten a lot better, but we're still have supply chain issues. And really the issue is that it may not be the product itself that we can't get, but there'll be components that we can't get to build that product. And so, kind of everybody's in the same boat that's in our industry, so our competition isn't necessarily any better or worse. But, there might be things that used to be lead times of, 6 to 18 weeks, and now it's 50 to 80 weeks, and just because there's a small component that is not available that you can't get anywhere else. That's our biggest challenge. And, we have labor challenges. We do a lot of technician work out in the field, and the labor pool in the trades is just not like it used to be. They're just not available like it used to be. I'm not quite sure where they all went. So those are a couple of our biggest challenges at this point.
How do you find being an ESOP affects those labor issues? Does it have any role to play in that?
Right. It's a good question. I would answer it this way. It could be kind of defined by the age or where a person is at in their career, because it's just when you hire a lot of field labor, they're generally could be anywhere from 20 years old to 60 years old, but the 20-30-year-olds don't necessarily think about retirement and wealth management like us more in our golden years. So it kind of depends. For recruiting purposes, it helps a lot, but it really helps for retention. People that have been here 5-10 years are starting to look at their portfolio of ESOP shares, and it's starting to be very meaningful. Whereas somebody that's starting out maybe 25 years old, they don't necessarily think about what they're going to be when they're 65 and 70. But it's a big recruiting tool, because we feel like we just think a little bit differently. There's only 6,000 or so ESOPs in the whole country. So, there's not a lot of them, but there's a lot of advantages to being an employee owner, because, they get to share in all the upside, of the company. And we've been very successful over the course of our existence. And, the 25 years we've been an ESOP, it's grown significantly.
It seems like years ago, I'm not sure when, but years ago, ESOPs were all the rage, and they seem to be popping up all over the place. And what happened? They seem, as you said, there's many less than there seemed to be before.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple things, likely. One is there's just different tax advantages for an ESOP. ESOPs are taxed like a 401k is. So the company itself doesn't pay corporate taxes. The taxes come when an employee cashes out, they retire, leave the company or whatever. And if they keep that cash, just like a 401k cash out, it gets taxed there. So the company's able to kind of reinvest a lot of those corporate tax savings that you don't have. I think there's probably been some different. I've been in an ESOP for 11 years now, and I imagine there's probably been some tax changes and different ways that ESOPs are, some of the legislation and stuff. But that statistically, I've seen a lot of statistics and research and stuff that our advisors give us that ESOPs, all things being equal, a lot of times perform a little bit better just because everybody is an employee owner, and all things being equal, you'd like to think that, if people put a little more TLC in or think differently as an owner, because, whether they spend this money or save this money or whatever, it really is as if it's their own business. And I think that, people that have been here a while, when they start to think that way, it changes behavior, and usually for the better. So there could be a lot of reasons. I mean, it's one of those too, when, you talk to people, or, the more success you see or more victories you see, the more people are interested in becoming an ESOP. It's when a company is selling to become an ESOP, it's a lot different sale process typically than whether it's private equity or a strategic buyer or whatever. It might be a different price point, because they're selling it, back to the employees, and that's important to the former owner, is, keeping all the employees going and keep it in the same direction that they've always gone. So that's a big consideration too, as more people see these victories happen with ESOPs.
Yeah. Does it change the way, does an ESOP require different kinds of leadership from you and someone in your position?
Um, I'd like to think that any company, you would act the same way, but when you're talking to another employee owner, the dynamics and the culture changes. It's much easier to talk to somebody that's out in the field, or the staff and things like that, when you can talk to them as a fellow employee owner, and I'm in the same boat as anybody else in the company. So that dynamic has to change, and it's easier to really sell the concept of an ESOP when you can show the success. I mean, literally, we show with our onboarding, with our new hires, and even during the recruiting, we show the trajectory of our stock price and kind of do the math for them and say, if you're here for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you're going to have a lot of digits in your stock portfolio for the company. And, so that makes those conversations a lot more fun, and it helps with retention, of, how, what if you stick around for the long haul, and if we're all successful, you can have a really nice retirement, and it's free money. It's not like a payroll deduction like a 401k. It's literally free money. You just get shares of stock every year. Some years are more than others depending on repurchase, but it's free money. It's like the closest thing to a pension without being one.
Yeah.
So it makes those conversations fun and a lot easier.
I work with a company it's privately held, but they have profit sharing, which I guess is the privately held version of ESOP, sort of.
Right.
And one of the things that they've noticed is that they feel like their levels of employee engagement in the overall business increases, as you said, because people, have a share in the ownership and want to make sure the whole organization is doing well, not just their part. And it seems to have reduced to a little bit anyway, sort of the interdepartmental rivalries of, well, sales is doing their job. It's the engineering that's not, or it's kind of like, as you said, we're all in this together. And they don't have a lot of hard statistics about that, but that's their sense, that people speak up more. They offer suggestions and solutions, and try and solve problems based on the whole organization, not just what would make their life easier.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're spot on. And, we've been doing traction or EOS for about 10, 11 years now. And so we have all these different traction meetings for the different departments. And we actually have people that occasionally will attend another department's traction meeting because they have some topic or issue that they want to cover with them. Not to say that any non-ESOP can't do that, but we use that as an opportunity to break down those silos. And like our generator division, for example, we have product sales and then we have service after the product is sold. So they have to work together. And same thing with our DC power. We'll sell a UPS and somebody's got to maintain it, change the batteries, do the install, whatever it might be. So they have to work together, even though it's a different leadership team. We actually had a topic the other day come up where somebody asked the question about, whether people in the field can get commissions or incentives if they refer work that we end up getting. And it was a great question, and we'd love to be able to do something like that. But the answer we had was, all boats rise, when, everybody in the company is a salesperson, including myself. If I see somebody at church on Sunday that might need a generator or something, it's best for the company to just, steer them in the right direction, and you don't necessarily get paid anymore. But that's part of being an ESOP. All boats rise, and we really work hard to do a lot of the inter-department, and we do monthly business review calls with the whole company, and we share what all the business units do. I mean, all the way from profitability to new projects, new hires, and we also at that time, we occasionally do some education, because somebody in the generator world may not know what the DC power world does, or the distribution group may not know what the service group does or whatever. So we try to do some just real basic cross training so everybody kind of knows, where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's we humans, there's a lot of research that shows how quickly we can get into tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, we're this department, and we sort of narrowly first, let's take care of me, but then it's the people I work with and my team. And the sort of subconscious piece is that there's everyone else is the others,
right?
And there's nothing that looks so easy to fix as somebody else's department.
Right.
The view from outside, it's so clear. Why don't you people do this? And then that would make my job easier, as opposed to a more global view, which it sounds like you're really cultivating within your organization.
Yeah, we do. And another thing kind of related to that is we take a lot of pride in being able to offer internal career opportunities for people. And usually it's not within the same division. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. We might have a field technician over here that becomes a project manager in another department. And we've, especially in the last 1 to 2, 3, 4 years, we've got a lot of people, we're 150 people. I'd say there's probably been 10 to 12 people that have moved into another role, maybe coming out of the field or going into the field. And so the more that people know within the company what the other divisions do, the better off it's going to be for them personally and professionally as well, because they know that so now when they see a project manager opening in the DC power, and maybe they're a field technician, it's like, I might interested in that because I know what those guys do, and that sounds fun. And that's kind of the next step in my career. So that's been really helpful, and that helps with retention, because you can kind of tell people you're not going to be, throwing batteries, 200-pound batteries around all day. You can move on to different things in project management or sales, or, warehouse, whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's one of I think a lot of organizations would be afraid of that, in that, especially given the labor shortages. It's like, well, if I get rid of my battery guy and let him move over, then I got to find somebody to replace him. So maybe I'll just keep him where he is.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's hard not to think that way. But a couple things happen. One is when we have somebody that applies or has interest internally, we make it very clear that one of the things that we can't do is just take you out of your spot and leave that spot vacant. So, I mean, we flat out have tell people, depending on the role, that, it's hard for you to move until you train your replacement. So in other words, we have field technicians that are, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and a level 4 or level 3 might want to go into project management. But we just tell them, you need to make sure that, these two guys over here get trained up so they can lead battery jobs. So when you move on to greener pastures, then they can just step right in. And until that happens, it's going to be hard to do. And so it not only they think about themselves, but now they have to think about their successor, because we tell people, it's a lot easier to move up when you got a strong bench behind you, that can step in for you. And in the leaders in the different divisions, I think I would like to say that we've gotten past, kind of I want to keep all the best talent in my group, but our leadership team in particular has all been here 5 to 30 years each. And, they get it, all boats rise. And so, they're okay with moving people on. I mean, and then they get some new talent to come in behind them, so, not to say that you don't think about that. I don't want to lose this guy because he's been good to me for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But it sounds too like, Tony, part of your culture is the expectation that you share knowledge and wisdom with each other. You don't, much like hoarding the good people there, you can also hoard the good knowledge. Like, I'm really good at my job. If I teach somebody else, then maybe I'm replaceable, as opposed to what it sounds like you've got an organization where, no, that's part of your job, is to help others get better and sort of improvement for everybody. And again, all boats rise.
Right, exactly. And we are very purposeful about that. In fact, we're Mary Nutting and their core talent team they do all of our recruiting, and they have an HR leader, kind of a talent leader, that is taking us through a bunch of different leadership and succession exercises, initiatives and stuff. And we're doing that right now. And we've identified, some of our top and our growth talent within the company, and we're holding each other accountable for, okay, what's this person's career development plan? And so every quarter we get together and we talk about, the people in that group, and, and say, Ron, what's these 3 people that you've identified, what's your formal plan for them, and where are they in the succession plan? So we hold each other accountable for that. And like I say, the Rick from Core Talent does a really nice job of leading us through that. That's his expertise, and we kind of follow his lead, but it's a formalized process, and it also includes succession planning. So, it's easy to say, okay, who's going to be the successor for Tony when he leaves, or Tim when he leaves, but it's all through the organization. And, we have field technicians that we have told that when we find somebody to backfill you as a lead technician, we got a project management spot for you, so it seems to work well, and we're becoming very purposeful and formal about that exercise and those initiatives.
Yeah, I think that's it kind of reminds me of something, a couple of clients that I have that sort of really, especially in the area of sort of developing people to be leaders in the organization and move up through supervisory ranks or whatever, and they established a leadership profile that says this is the expectations for any leader at any level in this organization. And they kind of start there, and then they look for people who can fit that, and then talk to them about, there's the job, but then there's what you're going to do, but there's also how you're going to go about doing it. And that's kind of what they look for. But one of the things they find is that, especially in the sort of, an employee might look at the supervisor or the foreman's job and say, well, that looks great, I want to do that. Maybe you get a pickup truck, or you stay pretty clean. That looks great. And some people get into that and they go, you know what? Nah, I didn't know how much people stuff there would be in this job. So I'd like to go back to doing what I was doing. But they give them the opportunity to try it out. And some people lean into it and others challenge. Have you had experiences with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a classic example of, going from a field technician where you're maybe on a job site all by yourself and you're using your hands, and, and solving problems out there, and all of a sudden you become a people manager, and it's a whole different level or different type of stress. I mean, I personally can't do the physical labor that those guys do because they work really hard and they go home just exhausted every night. But then you move into a different manager, people leader role in the same division or whatever, and you go home just as trashed at night. But it's because of the stress that's involved, because everybody's calling you to help them fix a problem, or you got an employee relations issue or whatever it might be. And it's like, wow, I didn't learn that in in school.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Conversation Street. For more information or to submit a question, email Success Authorities at inquire@successauthorities.com.